Rain poured heavily over the city cemetery. A tiny boy, no older than 6, stood beside a fresh grave with bare feet and a torn shirt. His face was covered in mud and tears. No one held his hand. No one comforted him. As the last person left the cemetery, the little boy whispered to the gravestone, "Mama, you promised you'd never leave me." A cold voice suddenly answered from behind him. "Because she never wanted you in the first place." The boy turned. A woman dressed in expensive black clothes stood there, holding an umbrella. She looked at him with disgust. It was his aunt. She pulled out an envelope and threw it into the mud. "Your mother is dead. Your father abandoned you years ago, and I certainly don't want you." The little boy picked up the muddy envelope with trembling hands. Inside was his birth certificate and a note. His mother's handwriting. "If anything happens to me, find the man whose name is on the last page." The boy turned the page. There was only one name. Richard Kingsley, the richest billionaire in the country. The little boy had no idea that this single name would change his life forever, and that in just a few weeks, half the city would be fighting to claim him. But before we continue, if stories filled with mystery, family secrets, and emotional twists are your thing, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Now let's find out why this little boy was sent to find Richard Kingsley. The little boy's name was Noah. After his mother's funeral, his aunt drove him home in complete silence. The entire ride felt strange. No soft words. No comforting hand on his shoulder. No "I'm sorry for your loss." Only silence. Noah sat in the back seat, clutching the muddy envelope his mother had left behind. He kept staring out the window, hoping this was all a terrible dream. Maybe his mother would suddenly call his name. Maybe she wasn't really gone. Maybe she would come back. But she didn't. When they arrived at his aunt's house, she got out of the car and walked toward the front door without even looking at him. Noah quickly followed. Inside the house, everything smelled different. Nothing looked familiar. Nothing felt like home. His aunt opened a tiny door at the end of the hallway. Inside was a dark storage room filled with old boxes, broken chairs, and cleaning supplies. She threw a thin mattress onto the floor. "You'll sleep here." Noah looked around. "There isn't a window." "There doesn't need to be one," she replied coldly. Then she walked away. That night, Noah lay on the mattress, staring into the darkness. He had never been afraid of the dark before. But this time, he felt completely alone. He quietly whispered, "Mama, where are you?" No answer came. Only silence. The next morning, his aunt woke him up before sunrise. "Get up." Noah rubbed his eyes. She handed him a broom. "From now on, if you're staying here, you'll earn your food." He didn't understand. He was only 6 years old. But he took the broom anyway. That day, he swept the house. Then he washed dishes. Then he cleaned the backyard. By evening, his hands were sore. When dinner was served, everyone sat at the table. His aunt, her husband, her 2 children. Noah stood quietly in the corner. "Can I eat too?" he asked softly. His aunt sighed. She scraped the leftovers from everyone's plates into a small bowl and handed it to him. "This should be enough." Noah nodded. He wasn't angry. He was just hungry. He sat on the floor and ate quietly. That became his life. Every morning, he cleaned. Every afternoon, he ran errands. Every night, he ate whatever was left. Sometimes there was barely any food at all. One afternoon, he accidentally dropped a glass. It shattered. His aunt stormed into the kitchen. "Do you know how much that costs?" "I'm sorry," Noah whispered. She grabbed his arm. "Sorry doesn't pay bills." Her children stood nearby and laughed. "He's useless," one of them said. "Maybe that's why his father left him," the other added. Those words pierced Noah's heart. He had never met his father. He didn't even know what he looked like. That night, he cried quietly into his pillow. Then he remembered the envelope. He pulled it out from under his mattress. Inside was the note his mother had left. He had read it so many times that he already knew every word. "If anything happens to me, find the man whose name is on the last page." He turned the paper over. The same name stared back at him. Richard Kingsley. Who was he? A friend, a relative, someone his mother trusted. And why had she waited until now to tell him? Every night, Noah asked himself the same questions. But there were never any answers. Days turned into weeks. Then one evening, Noah went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. As he walked past the living room, he heard his aunt talking on the phone. Her voice was low. Annoyed. "I've done enough already." Silence. Then she continued. "No, I don't care where he goes." Noah stopped walking. "He isn't my responsibility." His heart began beating faster. Then he heard the words that changed everything. "I'm sending him away tomorrow. I can't keep feeding this child." Noah froze. The glass slipped from his hand and nearly fell. She wanted to get rid of him. Again. First his father. Now his mother was gone. And now his aunt didn't want him either. He slowly stepped back before she could see him. Then he returned to the storage room. He sat on the mattress for a long time. The room felt colder than ever. He looked at the note in his hands. Then he looked at the old family photo of him and his mother. A tear rolled down his cheek. "Nobody wants me," he whispered. For a moment, he thought about staying. Maybe his aunt would change her mind. Maybe she didn't mean it. But deep inside, he knew the truth. If he stayed, tomorrow he would be abandoned again. So he made a decision. The biggest decision of his young life. He took a small backpack. Inside, he packed 2 shirts, a pair of socks, and the family photograph. Then he carefully folded his mother's note and placed it inside. He looked around the tiny storage room one last time. Nobody came to stop him. Nobody even knew he was leaving. As midnight approached, Noah quietly opened the back door. The cold wind hit his face. He took one step outside. Then another. And another. A 6-year-old boy walked into the darkness with nowhere to go. The only thing he carried was his mother's note, and the name that would change his life forever. Richard Kingsley. Noah left his aunt's house in the middle of the night. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't know how far away Richard Kingsley lived. All he had was his mother's note. And hope. The streets were almost empty. A cold wind blew against his face as he walked. After a while, his legs started hurting. But he kept going. Every few minutes, he would take the note from his pocket and read the name again. Richard Kingsley. He whispered it to himself. Maybe he knows my mom. A few hours later, the sun began to rise. Noah had never been this far from home before. Cars rushed past him. People walked by without noticing him. Some looked at him with pity. Others ignored him completely. By noon, he was hungry. Very hungry. He hadn't eaten since the previous evening. The smell of fresh bread drifted from a nearby bakery. He stood outside the shop for several minutes, staring through the glass. Families sat inside eating breakfast. Children laughed with their parents. Noah quietly looked away. He continued walking. As evening approached, his feet were covered in dust. He sat on a bench in a small park and pulled out the family photograph. His mother was smiling in the picture. He gently touched her face. "I miss you, Mama." For a moment, he thought about going back. But then he remembered his aunt's words. "I can't keep feeding this child." A tear rolled down his cheek. There was nothing for him to go back to. So he stood up and continued walking. That night he slept on the park bench. He curled himself into a bowl to keep warm. Above him, the stars shone brightly. Before falling asleep, he made a promise. "I'll find him, Mama, I promise." The next morning, he continued his journey. He asked several people if they knew Richard Kingsley. Most ignored him. A few laughed. One man finally stopped. "Richard Kingsley, the billionaire." Noah's eyes widened. "You know him." "Everyone knows him," the man replied. He pointed toward the city skyline. "You see that tall building over there? That's his company." Noah looked into the distance. Even from far away, he could see the enormous glass tower rising above every other building. For the first time in days, he smiled. He thanked the man and started running. Hours later, he finally arrived. He stood at the entrance of the tallest building he had ever seen. The words on the front read, Kingsley Corporation. People in expensive suits walked in and out of the building. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Noah suddenly became nervous. His clothes were dirty. His hair was messy. His shoes were worn out. He looked completely out of place. But he remembered his mother's note. Taking a deep breath, he walked toward the security desk. One of the guards looked at him. "Can I help you?" Noah nodded. "I need to see Mr. Richard Kingsley." The guard blinked. "Who?" "Richard Kingsley." The second guard burst into laughter. "You want to see the owner of this company?" Noah nodded again. "It's important." The two men exchanged amused looks. "And do you have an appointment?" Noah frowned. "I don't know what that means." The guards laughed even harder. A few employees passing by also turned to look. One of them chuckled. Another shook his head. To them, he was just another homeless child. The first guard sighed. "Go home, kid." "I can't." "Then go somewhere else." "I have to see him." The second guard stepped forward and gently pushed him away from the entrance. "Move along." But Noah didn't leave. He stood there holding the note tightly. "I need to talk to him. Mr. Kingsley doesn't meet strangers. But my mother told me to find him." The guard's smiles slowly faded. "Your mother?" Noah nodded. "Please, I came a very long way." For a second, one of the guards looked almost sympathetic. But company rules were company rules. "I'm sorry, kid, you can't stay here." They moved him away from the entrance. Still, Noah refused to leave. As the sun began to set, the employees slowly went home. The parking lot became empty. The city lights turned on. And there, near the front gate of the enormous building, sat a small boy all by himself. He hugged his backpack tightly. The note remained clutched in his tiny hands. Hours passed. The night grew colder. His stomach growled. But he stayed, because this was his last hope. If Richard Kingsley couldn't help him, he didn't know what he would do next. Eventually, Noah fell asleep sitting against the wall outside the building. The next morning, the sound of car doors opening woke him up. Several black luxury vehicles had arrived. Security guards suddenly stood straighter. Employees hurried toward the entrance. Then a long, black limousine slowly pulled up. The back door opened. A tall, powerful man stepped out. His expensive suit was perfectly pressed. Everyone around him seemed nervous. This wasn't just a businessman. This was one of the richest and most powerful men in the country. Richard Kingsley himself. Noah slowly stood to his feet. The billionaire took a few steps toward the building. Then he noticed the small boy near the gate. He stopped. Completely. His eyes narrowed. A strange expression crossed his face. He looked at the boy again. And again. Because the child's face, the shape of his eyes, the color of his hair, even the way he stood, looked exactly like someone Richard had loved many years ago. Someone he had never forgotten. Someone he believed he had lost forever. For the first time in years, the billionaire's heart skipped a beat. Richard Kingsley stood frozen outside the entrance of his company. For a few seconds, the entire world around him seemed to disappear. The employees, the security guards, the waiting cars, everything faded into the background. All he could see was the little boy standing before him. The child looked exhausted. His clothes were wrinkled and dusty. There were dark circles under his eyes, as though he hadn't slept properly in days. Yet something about him felt strangely familiar. Richard slowly stepped closer. The boy didn't move. He simply looked up at the billionaire with tired eyes. Richard swallowed hard. "Who are you?" he asked softly. The little boy reached into his backpack. For a brief moment, the security guards became alert. But instead of pulling out anything dangerous, Noah carefully removed a folded piece of paper. The edges were worn and creased, as if it had been opened many times. He held it out. "My mother said I should give this to you." Richard frowned. "Your mother?" Noah nodded. "She said if anything happened to her, I should find you." A strange feeling settled in Richard's chest. He slowly took the paper. The moment his fingers touched it, he noticed something. The handwriting on the outside of the note. He knew it. He would recognize it anywhere. His heart suddenly began to race. No, it couldn't be. With trembling fingers, he unfolded the paper. As his eyes moved across the first line, the color drained from his face. He knew that handwriting. He knew every curve of every letter. It belonged to only one person. Elena, the woman he had loved more than anything. The woman who had disappeared years ago without explanation. The woman he had searched for endlessly. His hands began to shake. He continued reading. "Richard, if you're reading this, then I'm gone." His breathing became uneven. "I never wanted to leave you." A painful memory flashed through his mind. A young woman laughing beneath the rain, holding his hand, promising that they would always be together. Another line. "There are things I should have told you long ago." Richard's eyes widened. Then he reached the final sentence. "This boy is your son." Silence. Absolute silence. The paper nearly slipped from his fingers. His knees weakened. One of his bodyguards quickly stepped forward. "Sir." But Richard didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was spinning. His son. He slowly looked up at the little boy. The child stared back at him nervously. Then Richard looked at the letter again. He read the words a second time, then a third, as if he couldn't believe they were real. For years, he had blamed himself for losing Alina. For years, he had wondered why she disappeared. For years, he had lived with regret. And now, he was learning that she had carried his child all along. Tears filled his eyes. The powerful billionaire who never showed weakness suddenly looked like a broken man. Noah took a small step back. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked quietly. Richard's heart shattered. The boy sounded frightened, as though he expected to be rejected, as though he had spent his entire life hearing bad news. Richard slowly crouched down until he was eye level with him. "What did you say your name was?" "Noah." "How old are you, Noah?" "I'm 6. Richard's hands trembled again. The years matched. Everything matched. He looked closely at the boy's face. The shape of his eyes. The small dimple on his cheek. Even the way he tilted his head. It was like looking at a younger version of himself. A tear rolled down Richard's face. He quickly wiped it away. Noah looked confused. "Are you crying?" Richard tried to speak, but no words came out. Finally, he managed to ask, "Your mother, where is she?" Noah lowered his head. "She died." The words hit Richard like a knife. His chest tightened. For years, he had dreamed of seeing Alina one more time, of asking why she had left, of telling her he never stopped loving her. Now, that chance was gone forever. He would never hear her voice again, never see her smile again. And she had carried this burden alone. He looked back at Noah. This little boy had lost his mother, and he had never even known his father. A wave of guilt washed over him. Noah had been alone all this time. Suddenly, Richard remembered something. "Who brought you here?" "No one. You came by yourself." Noah nodded. "I walked." Richard's eyes widened. "You walked?" The boy nodded again. "I didn't know where else to go." The words broke something inside him. This child had crossed the city alone, looking for a man he had never met. Because his mother trusted him. Richard closed his eyes for a moment. Then he looked at Noah once more. And for the first time in years, he felt something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. But while this emotional reunion was unfolding below, someone else was watching. From the top floor of the building, a man stood beside the glass window, gripping a cup of coffee so tightly that his hand trembled. It was Richard's younger brother. He had seen everything. The boy, the letter, the look on Richard's face. Panic filled his eyes. "No," he whispered. "This can't be happening." Because he knew something no one else did. Years ago, he had made sure Alina disappeared from Richard's life. He had hidden letters, destroyed evidence, and convinced his brother that she had abandoned him. Why? Because if Richard ever had a child, everything would change. The company, the fortune, the inheritance, everything he hoped to one day control, would belong to that little boy. He stared at Noah in horror, then at the letter in Richard's hand. For the first time in many years, he was afraid. because the past he had buried had just walked through the front gates of Kingsley Corporation. News spread quickly. By noon, everyone inside Kingsley Corporation was whispering. By evening, the entire mansion knew. And by the next morning, the city's biggest rumor was everywhere. Richard Kingsley might have an heir. For most people, it was shocking news. But for the people closest to Richard, it was a disaster. Because for years, they had all believed the billionaire would leave his empire to them. Now everything was changing. Inside the Kingsley mansion, the atmosphere was tense. Noah sat quietly on a large sofa. He had never seen a house this beautiful before. The ceilings seemed to touch the sky. The chandeliers sparkled like stars. Even the carpet felt softer than his mattress in the storage room. But despite all the luxury around him, he felt uncomfortable. He didn't belong here. Servants walked past him, stealing curious glances. Some smiled kindly. Others looked suspicious. One maid brought him a glass of milk. Another brought him a plate of food. Noah stared at it. There was so much food. More than he had eaten in weeks. Is all this for me? He asked. The maid smiled. Yes, young master. Young master. The words sounded strange. No one had ever called him that before. Noah looked down at the plate, unsure of what to do. Before he could take a bite, angry footsteps echoed through the room. Richard's younger brother stormed inside. Behind him came several family members. His face was pale with anger. This is ridiculous, he shouted. The servants immediately stepped aside. Richard entered the room moments later. His expression was calm, but his eyes were firm. The younger brother pointed directly at Noah. Who is this child? Richard looked at Noah. My son. The room exploded. No, he is. He just appeared out of nowhere. This could be a scam. You can't seriously believe a letter. Noah looked from one face to another. He didn't understand why everyone was angry. The younger brother stepped closer. You've built this empire for decades, Richard. You're going to hand everything over to a child you met yesterday. Richard's expression darkened. I said he's my son. According to whom? A dead woman's letter. Silence filled the room. Noah lowered his head. He didn't like hearing people talk about his mother that way. Richard noticed. His voice became cold. Watch your words. The younger brother took a deep breath. Then he spoke more calmly. If this child is truly your son, prove it. The room fell silent again. Everyone understood what he meant. A DNA test. The billionaire's wife folded her arms. She stared at Noah with suspicion. Children have been used in inheritance schemes before. Another relative nodded. Anyone can write a letter. Maybe someone sent him here for money. Money. Inheritance. Empire. The words meant nothing to Noah. He looked around the room, confused. Why did everyone keep talking about money? He didn't come here for money. He didn't even know Richard was rich. He had come because his mother told him to. That's all. Richard looked at the little boy. Noah's hands were shaking. He looked scared. Suddenly, Richard realized something. The child had lost his mother only days ago. He had traveled across the city alone. And now he was being treated like a criminal. The thought angered him. No one is accusing this child of anything, Richard said firmly. The younger brother crossed his arms. Then do the test. Silence. Finally, Richard nodded. Fine. A smile almost appeared on his brother's face. Because he was certain of one thing. There was no way this could be true. No way. The billionaire's wife looked relieved. The board members also seemed calmer. Proof would settle everything. But Noah looked worried. He slowly raised his hand. Everyone turned toward him. Excuse me. His voice was barely above a whisper. What is a DNA test? The room became quiet. Nobody answered. Richard slowly walked toward him. He knelt beside the boy. It just helps us find out if we're family. Noah looked down. Those. After a long pause, he asked another question. If it says we're not family, do I have to leave? The words hit everyone in the room. Noah wasn't worried about money. He wasn't worried about the company. He wasn't worried about becoming rich. He was afraid of being abandoned again. Richard's heart broke. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then he gently placed his hand on Noah's shoulder. The little boy looked up at him. His eyes were filled with fear. Fear that this place would become another home that didn't want him. Fear that he would once again have nowhere to go. Richard's voice softened. You won't be alone tonight. The boy blinked. And no matter what happens, no one is throwing you out. Noah stared at him. No one had ever said those words to him before. A tear formed in his eye. He quickly wiped it away. For the first time since his mother's death, someone had protected him. Someone had stood beside him. Someone had called him son. But across the room, Richard's younger brother watched the scene with growing fear. Because, for the first time, he saw something dangerous. Not the letter. Not the possibility of a DNA match. No. He saw the look in Richard's eyes. The billionaire was already becoming attached to the child. And if the test confirmed the truth, everything he had spent years waiting for would belong to Noah. 3 long days passed. For Noah, it felt like forever. The Kingsley mansion was beautiful, but it didn't feel like home. Every morning, he woke up wondering the same thing. Would he be allowed to stay? Or would he have to leave again? The servants treated him kindly. They brought him new clothes, warm meals, even toys. But Noah barely touched any of them. Instead, he spent most of his time sitting by the large window in his room, holding his mother's photograph. At night, he would whisper to the picture, "Mama, do you think he'll like me?" No one answered. The only thing that comforted him was remembering Richard's words. You won't be alone tonight. Meanwhile, the entire mansion was tense. No one talked about anything except the DNA test. The board members called constantly. Family members whispered in corners. And Richard's younger brother barely slept. He kept packing his room. Sweating. Worrying. No. Panicking. Because deep down, he already knew the truth. The boy looked too much like Richard. The same eyes. The same smile. The same expression. Every time he saw Noah, he felt a knot in his stomach. On the morning of the 3rd day, everyone was called into the mansion's grand living room. The atmosphere was heavy. A long table stood in the center of the room. The family members sat on one side. The company's lawyer sat at the other. In his hand was a sealed envelope. The DNA results. Noah sat quietly in a chair. His feet didn't even touch the floor. He looked around nervously. Everyone seemed so serious. He didn't understand why. To him, it was just a piece of paper. To everyone else, it was something that could change their lives forever. Richard sat beside him. Although he appeared calm, his hands were clenched tightly. For the first time in years, the billionaire was afraid. Not of losing money, not of losing his company, but of losing hope. Because during the past 3 days, he had begun to care deeply for the little boy beside him. He had watched Noah thank the servants for every meal. He had watched him carefully fold his mother's note every night before going to bed. And he had seen the sadness in his eyes whenever someone mentioned parents. Richard didn't know when it happened, but he already felt like a father. Across the room, his younger brother folded his arms confidently. "This nonsense is finally over," he said. Nobody replied. The lawyer slowly adjusted his glasses. He looked around the room, then at the envelope. The entire mansion seemed to hold its breath. Even the ticking of the grandfather clock sounded loud. Dig, dig, dig. Finally, the lawyer broke the seal. The sound of the envelope opening echoed through the room. He pulled out the papers. His eyes moved across the page. Then suddenly, he smiled. Richard's brother frowned. "Well," he asked impatiently. The lawyer looked up. His voice was calm. "The DNA test confirms." The room became perfectly silent. "That Noah is Richard Kingsley's biological son." For a second, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then, "What?" someone shouted. The room exploded. Several relatives stood up in shock. One woman covered her mouth. Another nearly dropped her glass. Richard's younger brother turned pale. The color drained completely from his face. "No." He looked at the lawyer, then at the papers, then at Noah. "This is impossible." His legs suddenly gave way. He dropped into his chair. Noah looked around, confused. Everyone was reacting as if something unbelievable had happened. He looked up at Richard. "Is that good news?" The question shattered the tension. Richard turned toward him. The little boy's eyes were filled with uncertainty. He still didn't understand. He still didn't realize what those words meant. A tear slowly rolled down Richard's cheek. Then another, and another. The billionaire who had built an empire. The man feared by competitors and respected by thousands, began to cry. Noah looked worried. Did something bad happen? Richard could no longer hold back his emotions. He slowly stood, then knelt in front of the little boy. Everyone in the room watched. He gently took Noah's small hands in his own. They were tiny, warm, real. His son's hands. Richard's voice trembled. "Noah." The boy looked up. The billionaire swallowed hard. "I wasn't there when you were born." Tears streamed down his face. "I wasn't there for your first steps." His voice broke. "I wasn't there when you said your first words." The room was silent. Some of the servants were already crying. Richard squeezed Noah's hands gently. "I wasn't there to protect you." Another tear rolled down his cheek. "And I wasn't there when you lost your mother." Noah's eyes slowly filled with tears too. The billionaire took a deep breath. "But if you'll let me." He paused, his voice barely a whisper. "I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Silence. A long, emotional silence. Noah stared at him. Nobody had ever spoken to him like this before. Nobody had ever wanted him this much. Then he asked softly, "You're really my dad?" Richard nodded. "Yes." The little boy blinked. "And you're not going to leave?" Richard's heart broke all over again. He immediately shook his head. "No, Noah, never." The boy's lips trembled. "Promise." The billionaire placed his hand over his heart. "I promise." That was all it took. Noah suddenly threw his arms around him. The room burst into tears. Even some of the family members who had doubted him began wiping their eyes. Richard hugged his son tightly, as though he were afraid he might disappear. For 6 years, he never knew this child existed. For 6 years, this little boy had lived without a father. And now, at last, they had found each other. Noah slowly pulled back. A tiny smile appeared on his face. It was the first real smile anyone had seen from him. The first smile since his mother's death. Richard smiled through his tears. Then he gently touched his son's cheek. At that moment, he made a silent promise to himself. No matter what it cost, no matter who stood in his way, no one would ever hurt this child again. Because Noah wasn't just the heir to his fortune. He was his son. Before we continue, if you're happy that Noah finally found his father, take a second to like this video and subscribe. Don't forget to drop a comment. But don't celebrate just yet. Because someone in this family is about to do something unthinkable. Not everyone in the Kingsley mansion was celebrating. While Richard spent the evening with Noah, someone else sat alone in a dark room. Richard's younger brother, Victor Kingsley. His hands trembled as he stared at the family photograph on his desk. The DNA results had changed everything. Everything. For years, he had lived with one belief. One day, the Kingsley Empire would belong to him. Richard had no wife, no children, no heir. Eventually, the company, the mansions, the private jets, and the billions of dollars would all become his. He had waited patiently for that day. But now, a little boy had appeared out of nowhere and destroyed all his dreams. Victor poured himself another drink, then another, but no amount of alcohol could calm him. He kept seeing Noah's face. The boy looked too much like Richard. The same eyes, the same smile, the same blood. Suddenly, a painful memory returned. Years ago, on a rainy evening, Victor had accidentally overheard a conversation. Richard had been on the phone. The happiest Victor had ever heard him. "I can't wait to tell everyone," Richard had said. "Elena and I are going to start a family." Victor had frozen. A family. A child. At that moment, fear had entered his heart. Because he knew exactly what it meant. If Richard had a child, his dreams of inheriting the empire would disappear. That night, Victor made a terrible decision. A decision that would haunt him for years. He hired a man to follow Elena, to watch her, to report everything. A few weeks later, the man returned with shocking news. Elena was pregnant. Victor remembered the exact moment. He had nearly dropped his glass. Richard was going to be a father. Panic consumed him. Days later, he intercepted a letter. It was addressed to Richard. The handwriting belonged to Elena. Inside, she had written the truth. She was pregnant. She wanted to surprise him. Victor never delivered the letter. Instead, he burned it. Then another letter came. And another. He destroyed those too. Eventually, he went even further. He paid someone to convince Elena that Richard had abandoned her, that he no longer loved her, that he wanted nothing to do with her or the baby. At the same time, he lied to Richard. He told his brother that Elena had left the country, that she had moved on, that she never wanted to see him again. Little by little, he separated them, and eventually, they stopped looking for each other. Victor had believed the secret was buried forever, until Noah arrived. Now all those lies were threatening to come back and destroy him. A knock suddenly came at his door. He quickly wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Come in." One of the family lawyers entered. "Mr. Kingsley, your brother has requested that his will be updated." Victor's heart skipped a beat. "Updated?" The lawyer nodded. "He wants to include Noah." The words struck him like lightning. Victor slowly stood. "No." The lawyer looked confused. No, this can't be happening." Without another word, the lawyer quietly left. Victor stood there in silence. Then anger exploded inside him. He swept everything off his desk. The glass shattered against the wall. Papers flew everywhere. "That boy took everything from me," he shouted. But deep down, he knew the truth. Noah hadn't taken anything. The empire had never been his. It belonged to Richard. And now, to Richard's son. Victor collapsed into his chair. For the first time in years, he was terrified. Because if Richard ever discovered the truth, if he ever learned about the stolen letters, the lies, the deception, he would lose everything. His money, his position, his family, perhaps even his freedom. Then his eyes slowly hardened. A dangerous thought entered his mind. A horrible thought. As long as Noah existed, the truth could come out. As long as Noah remained in the family, everything Victor had built would crumble. He looked out the window. In the garden below, Richard and Noah were laughing together. Richard was teaching the little boy how to throw a ball. Noah laughed. A genuine, happy laugh. Victor's jaw tightened. That sound made him furious, because he had never seen his brother look so happy. Not in years. The little boy had given Richard something money never could. A family. And Victor hated him for it. He slowly clenched his fists. Then he whispered words that chilled the room. "This ends now." He picked up his phone. His hands no longer trembled. His decision had been made. A dangerous decision. The most terrible one of his life. He dialed a number he had not called in years. The line rang twice. Then a voice answered. Victor looked once more at Noah, playing in the garden. His expression turned cold. "I need a problem taken care of." A long silence followed. Then he added quietly, "Forever." Outside, Noah laughed again, completely unaware that someone in the mansion had just decided he should disappear. Forever. A few days after the DNA results, life at the Kingsley mansion began to change. For the first time in a long time, laughter could be heard in the house. And it was all because of Noah. Every morning, Richard had breakfast with him. Every evening, they spent time together in the garden. They were making up for lost years, one small moment at a time. One evening, Richard returned home earlier than usual. He found Noah sitting on the living room floor with a box of crayons. The little boy looked up and smiled. "Dad, you're home." Richard froze for a second. It was the first time Noah had called him that. "Dad." The single word filled his heart. A smile slowly spread across his face. "Yes, I'm home." Noah picked up a drawing and ran toward him. "I made this for you." Richard took the paper. It was a simple drawing. A house, a bright sun, a woman with long hair, a tall man, and a little boy standing between them. Above the drawing were 3 words written in shaky handwriting. "My family forever." Richard swallowed hard. "Who's this?" he asked gently, pointing to the woman. "Mama." "And this?" "You." "And this little boy?" Noah smiled. "Me." Richard looked at the picture for a long time. Then Noah said something that nearly brought him to tears. "I know Mama isn't here anymore, but I think she'd be happy that I found you." Richard's eyes filled with tears. He pulled Noah into a hug. "I think so too." The little boy hugged him tightly. Neither of them noticed someone watching from the hallway. "Victor." His expression was dark, cold. The bond between father and son was growing stronger every day. And with every passing moment, Victor felt himself losing everything. That night, Richard had to attend an emergency meeting with several company executives. Before leaving, he knelt in front of Noah. "I won't be long." Noah nodded. "Okay, Dad." Richard smiled. "Promise me you'll stay inside." "I promise." Richard gently kissed his forehead. "I'll see you soon." Noah waved as he left. "I'll wait for you." A few hours later, the mansion had become quiet. Most of the staff had retired for the night. Noah couldn't sleep. He looked at the drawing he had made earlier. Then he looked out the window. The garden looked beautiful under the moonlight. He remembered the flowers he and Richard had planted that morning. Maybe he could check on them. Just for a minute. He quietly put on his shoes and slipped outside. The cool night air greeted him. The entire garden was peaceful. He smiled. Then, a voice came from behind him. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" Noah turned. A man stood near the gate. He didn't recognize him. "Who are you?" Noah asked. The man smiled kindly. "Your father sent me." Noah frowned. "My dad." "Yes, he wanted me to bring you to him." The little boy's eyes widened. "Really?" The man nodded. "He's waiting." Noah hesitated. His father had told him to stay inside. But maybe there had been an emergency. Maybe his dad needed him. The man held out his hand. "Come on, we don't want to keep him waiting." After a moment, Noah slowly walked toward him. That was the last time anyone saw him that night. An hour later, Richard returned home. The first thing he noticed was the silence. Usually, Noah would run to greet him. "Dad, you're back." But tonight, nothing. Richard smiled and walked toward the boy's room. The bed was empty. He checked the bathroom. Nothing. The playroom. Nothing. The garden. Nothing. A strange feeling settled in his chest. "Noah," he called. No answer. He searched the entire first floor. Then the second. Then every room in the mansion. "Noah." His voice became louder. Servants rushed from their rooms. Everyone started searching. Panic spread quickly. One maid came running down the stairs. "Mr. Kingsley, we can't find him." Another servant shook his head. "He's nowhere in the house." Richard's face turned pale. "No." His breathing became uneven. "No, no, no." Then one of the security guards shouted from the front entrance, "Sir!" Richard ran toward him. The guard held a folded piece of paper. It was left at the gate. Richard took it with shaking hands. He opened it. There were only a few words written on the page. "Choose your company or your son." The world seemed to stop. Richard's hands trembled. His son had been taken. The little boy he had just found was gone. The paper slipped from his fingers. For the first time in many years, the powerful billionaire looked completely helpless. One of the servants picked up the note. Everyone gasped. A kidnapping. Someone had kidnapped Noah. Richard closed his eyes. Images flashed through his mind. Noah eating breakfast. Noah laughing in the garden. Noah calling him Dad. Then another memory. "You're not going to leave, right?" "No, Noah, never." And no, he had failed him. He had left for just a few hours. And his son had disappeared. A tear rolled down his cheek. Then another. "I just found him," he whispered. The servants stood in silence. None of them had ever seen Richard Kingsley cry. He suddenly grabbed his phone. "Call the police." Another phone. "Get my security team here now." Another. "Shut down every airport, every train station, every private terminal." His voice broke. "Find my son." Within minutes, the mansion was in chaos. Police cars arrived. Security teams searched the grounds. Helicopters prepared to take off. But Richard remained standing in the middle of the living room, holding Noah, drawing, "My family forever." A single tear landed on the paper. For the first time in his life, the billionaire didn't care about his company. He didn't care about his fortune. He didn't care about money. He would have traded every dollar he owned. For one thing, to hear his son say one more time, "Dad, you're home." As the search began, one terrible thought kept repeating in his mind. Where was Noah? And was he still safe? The Kingsley mansion had never been so quiet. No one slept that night. No one even tried. Police officers moved in and out of the house. Security teams answered phone calls. Computers glowed in the dark as investigators searched for any clue that could lead them to Noah. But Richard couldn't sit still. He stood in the middle of the living room, still holding Noah's drawing. "My family forever." His hands trembled. Every minute felt like an hour. Every second without Noah felt unbearable. A police officer approached him. "Mr. Kingsley, we need you to stay calm." Richard looked at him. "Calm," he said quietly. "My son is missing." The officer lowered his eyes. There was nothing he could say. Richard turned away and looked out the window. Just a few days ago, he hadn't even known Noah existed. Now, he couldn't imagine life without him. A detective walked into the room. "Sir, we've checked the security cameras." Richard immediately turned. "And?" The detective hesitated. "There may be a light." The entire room fell silent. The detective placed a photograph on the table. It showed a man standing near the mansion gate. Richard frowned. "I've never seen him before." "We are running facial recognition now." A few moments later, Another officer rushed into the room. "Sir, we found something." Everyone looked up. The officer held a file in his hand. "The man in the photograph has a criminal record." Richard stepped forward. "What kind of criminal?" "Kidnapping, extortion, and illegal activities." The room went silent. The detective opened the file. Then his expression changed. "What is it?" Richard asked. The detective slowly looked up. "We found something else." He laid another document on the table. Phone records. There was one number the suspect had contacted several times. Very recently. The detective swallowed. The calls came from inside this house. Richard frowned. "What do you mean?" The detective looked directly at him. "The suspect was communicating with someone in your family." The room suddenly became tense. One by one, everyone looked at each other. Then, a voice came from the doorway. "That's impossible." It was Victor. He stepped into the room, looking nervous. No one in this family would do such a thing. The detective studied him carefully. Then he asked, "Mr. Victor Kingsley, where were you tonight?" Victor blinked. "In my room." "Can anyone confirm that?" A brief silence. "No." The detective nodded slowly. Then he held up the phone records. "The number belongs to you." The room froze. Victor's face turned white. Richard stared at his brother. "No." Victor quickly shook his head. "No, this is a mistake." The detective stepped closer. "The evidence says otherwise." "I said it's a mistake." His voice cracked. Sweat formed on his forehead. The detective spoke calmly. "The kidnapper called you 6 times tonight." "No." "He also called you yesterday." "No." "And the day before." Victor's breathing became uneven. Richard couldn't believe what he was hearing. He slowly turned toward his brother. "Victor!" But Victor couldn't look him in the eye. The room was silent. Then the detective asked one final question. "Where is Noah?" Victor looked up. Fear filled his face. I don't know." "Where is the child?" "I don't know." The detective's voice became firmer. "Mr. Kingsley, if you don't cooperate, things will become much worse." Victor's hands began to shake. He looked around the room. At the police. At the servants. At his family. Finally, at Richard. The disappointment in his brother's eyes nearly broke him. He lowered his head. And then, he started crying. "I never wanted it to go this far." The room became still. Richard took a step forward. "What are you talking about?" Victor looked up, tears streaming down his face. "I just wanted the boy gone." A gasp filled the room. Richard's heart stopped. "You what?" Victor's voice trembled. "I didn't want him to take everything." "Silence. You had no children, no heirs. The company was supposed to be mine one day." Richard stared at him in disbelief. Victor continued crying. Then he appeared and everything changed. The detective looked at him. "Where is Noah?" Victor closed his eyes. "I hired someone to take him." The room erupted. Several family members stood up in shock. One woman covered her mouth. Another began crying. Richard couldn't move. The words didn't seem real. Then Victor said something even worse. "I also lied years ago." Richard slowly looked at him. "What?" Victor's lips trembled. "It was me." "Silence." I hid Elena's letters. Richard's face drained of color. I told her that you didn't want her. Another silence. I told you that she had abandoned you. The entire room froze. Tears streamed down Victor's face. I separated you. Richard looked as if he had been struck. No. I destroyed every letter she sent. No. I kept you from your son. Richard staggered backward. A servant quickly supported him. The room spun around him. All those years, all those lonely nights, all the pain, all the searching, it had all been a lie. His own brother had stolen his family from him. Victor looked up. I'm sorry. But Richard's eyes were filled with tears. The apology meant nothing. He slowly walked toward his brother. His voice trembled. You didn't just steal my inheritance. A tear rolled down his face. You stole my family. The room fell silent. You stole 6 years from my son. Another tear. You stole the woman I loved. His voice broke. And you made us suffer for money. Victor lowered his head. Unable to speak. The detectives stepped forward. Mr. Victor Kingsley, you're under arrest. The sound of handcuffs echoed through the room. As the officers led him away, Victor stopped. He looked back at Richard. I'm sorry. But Richard didn't answer. He couldn't. At that very moment, another officer rushed inside. So, everyone turned. We found the location of the kidnappers. Richard's heart pounded. What about Noah? The officer smiled. He's alive. The words hit him like a wave. Alive. His son was alive. They're bringing him home. For the first time that night, Richard cried tears of relief. A few hours later, a police car pulled into the mansion. The door opened, and a small figure stepped out. Noah. Before anyone could say anything, Richard ran. Dad, Noah cried. The little boy threw himself into his arms. Richard held him tightly, as though he would never let go again. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Noah wrapped his arms around his father's neck. I was scared. Richard's heart broke. I know, but I knew you'd come for me. The words brought fresh tears to his eyes. The little boy had never doubted him. Not even for a second. Richard pulled back and looked at his son. You'll never be alone again. Noah smiled through his tears. Then he hugged him once more. And for the first time since the nightmare began, they were finally together again. 1 year later, the Kingsley mansion looked completely different. There was laughter again, warmth, life, and in the center of it all was Noah. The little boy who once slept on a thin mattress in a dark storage room now had a bright bedroom filled with books, toys, and photographs. But his favorite thing in the room wasn't the toys or the expensive furniture. It was a framed picture on his bedside table. A picture of him, Richard, and his mother. Richard had restored an old photograph of Elena and placed it there for him. Every night before bed, Noah would look at the picture and whisper, "Good night, Mama." And every morning, he would smile at it and say, "Guess what? Dad made pancakes again." He still missed her every day. But the sadness wasn't as heavy anymore. Because he wasn't alone. For the first time in his life, he had a family. Downstairs, Richard was making breakfast. A task he had surprisingly become very good at least according to Noah. "Dad," Noah shouted as he ran into the kitchen. Richard turned around and smiled. "Good morning, buddy." Noah climbed onto a chair. "You promised we'd leave early today." Richard laughed. "I remember. Today was a special day. The annual celebration of Kingsley Corporation. Thousands of employees would be attending. Business partners from all over the country would be there. And for the first time, Richard had decided to introduce Noah to the world, the official heir of the Kingsley Empire. But Noah wasn't excited about the event. He looked nervous. "What if they don't like me?" he asked quietly. Richard stopped what he was doing. He walked over and knelt beside him. "Why would you think that?" Noah looked down. "Because before, nobody wanted me." The words broke Richard's heart. Even after a year, the little boy still carried those scars. Richard gently lifted his chin. "Listen to me." Noah looked up. "You are loved." A tear formed in the boy's eye. "You are wanted." Another tear. "And no matter what happens today, you'll always have me." Noah slowly smiled. Then he threw his arms around his father. Richard hugged him tightly. "I love you, Dad," Noah whispered. The billionaire closed his eyes. Those 4 words meant more to him than all the money he had ever earned. A few hours later, the celebration began. The massive hall was filled with thousands of employees. Music played. People laughed and talked. Large screens displayed the company's achievements over the years. Then the lights suddenly dimmed. The room became quiet. A spotlight appeared on the stage. Richard Kingsley walked out. The audience immediately erupted into applause. But after a few moments, he raised his hand. The room fell silent. He looked out at the thousands of faces before him. Then he smiled. "There was a time when I believed I had everything." The audience listened carefully. "I had success, wealth, power." He paused. "But I was wrong." The room became even quieter. Because the most important thing in life isn't money. He looked toward the side of the stage. "It's family." A photograph suddenly appeared on the large screen. It was a picture of Noah laughing in the garden. The audience murmured. Richard smiled. "1 year ago, a little boy walked into my life." Another photograph appeared. This one showed Noah holding a drawing. He came carrying nothing but a small backpack and a letter. Another photograph. Richard and Noah planting flowers together. "And he gave me something I thought I had lost forever." He paused. "A second chance." Some people in the audience were already wiping away tears. Richard took a deep breath. Then he said the words that would make headlines across the country. "Today, I want to introduce someone very special." He looked toward the side of the stage. "Noah, come here." The entire hall became silent. A small boy slowly walked onto the stage. He looked nervous. Thousands of eyes were on him. Richard held out his hand. Noah immediately took it. The audience smiled. The billionaire looked proudly at his son. Then he made the announcement. "This is my son, Noah Kingsley, and the future heir of the Kingsley Empire." For a moment, the room was silent. Then the entire hall erupted. Thunderous applause filled the building. People stood to their feet. Some cheered. Others cried. The little boy who had once been unwanted. The child who had been abandoned. The boy who ate leftovers and slept in a storage room was now standing before thousands of people as the heir to a billion-dollar empire. But Noah didn't seem interested in the applause. He looked up at his father, then at the crowd. Finally, he stepped closer to the microphone. The room slowly became quiet again. The little boy took a deep breath. I don't really understand what an heir is. A few people laughed softly. Noah continued. I don't know much about companies either. The room became silent. Then he looked at Richard. Tears filled his eyes. I know everyone says I'm lucky because my dad is rich. His voice trembled. But I don't want to be rich. A tear rolled down his cheek. The entire hall listened in silence. I don't want big houses. Another tear. I don't want lots of money. His lower lip trembled. Then he looked directly at his father and said the words that brought everyone to tears. I just don't want to be alone anymore. The room fell completely silent. Many people in the audience were openly crying. Richard couldn't hold back his tears. Neither could the employees. Even the executives wiped their eyes. Noah looked up at his father. Can I stay with you forever? That question shattered every heart in the room. Richard immediately pulled him into a hug. He held him tightly, as if he would never let go. You never have to ask that again, he whispered. Noah began crying. So I can stay. Richard smiled through his tears. For the rest of our lives. The little boy hugged him even tighter. For years, he had feared being abandoned. Forgotten. Left behind. But not anymore. Richard gently kissed his forehead. You are my son. He wiped the tears from Noah's face. And I will choose you every single day. The audience burst into applause once more. On the giant screen behind them, another photograph appeared. It was the first picture Richard had ever taken with Noah. Beneath it were the words, the child nobody wanted found the family he deserved. Noah looked up at the screen. Then he smiled. A real smile. A happy smile. The smile of a child who no longer felt alone. The boy who once had nothing, now had everything he had ever wanted. Not money, not fame, not an empire, just a father who loved him. As the applause continued, Noah looked up toward the sky and whispered softly, We did it, Mama. And somehow, for the first time in a very long time, he felt that she was smiling too. If Noah's journey touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes that every child deserves love and a family. And remember, sometimes the people who feel the most unwanted end up becoming the most treasured.